All right, so a landmark agreement there between India and Canada, and before that you saw excerpts from the PM's address to the Indian diaspora in Toronto's Ricoh Coliseum today. Professor Chaulia, how do you look at this deal between India and Canada? Cameco Corporation will supply 3,000 metric tons of uranium over 5 years. What does it mean for India in terms of its quest for nuclear power generation?
Oh, most of our reactors are running below operational capacity because of fuel shortages. So this is going to be a huge bonus. I mean, we are trying to do more with other countries, as co-panelists have pointed out. And I think Canadian supply line will be crucial for us to ramp up. And even from the Canadian point of view, Cameco is in Saskatchewan. That's where, you know, people are like, the whole local economy is so dependent upon uranium extraction and mining and supply. So for a lot of them, you know, it's a huge turnaround. They have been looking forward to Mr. Modi's visit more than our media here, which is somehow, as has been pointed out, been quite subdued on this during this trip compared to the US and the Australia trips. But for the Canadian economy also, so it's a win-win. We desperately need it, and in the process we are also supporting local economies in Canada, which are dependent on this.
In terms of job creation,
absolutely, and even export revenues. Because Canada has got this new Global Markets Action Plan. What they're thinking is, you know, we are so dependent on the US market for so long within the NAFTA framework that when the downturn happened in 2008, the economic crisis, suddenly Canadian fortunes dipped. Although they didn't have the same level of recession as the US. So they've been trying to diversify away, and they've been looking at emerging markets. Already with China, they're very advanced. China-Canada trade is like over $60 billion. And so the next big one, for obvious reasons, is going to be India. And even more India than China in the future, because India is projected to overtake China economic growth from this year onwards. And we are going to be industrializing much more because China has reached a kind of a saturation point. So I think for Stephen Harper, it's like a winning bet. He's like really promoted Modi in a big way. It's going to help him for his election with all the Indian Canadians out there, because to have Harper, you know, joining hands with Modi on a big stage and to be seen to be working on the same frequency is going to work with, remember, 1.4 million people is like almost, what, 5% of Canada's population or something like that. So that's a lot of Indian Canadians out there. So for all these reasons, I think the nuclear deal will be one that, you know, because there's a criticism of Mr. Modi that he just goes and does a big, you know, road show, and he wants to be the star. He doesn't bring anything concrete. That's what his critics have claimed. But if you see consistently all the way until this visit, he gets something back, and he brags about it, and he has a right to do so.
Okay. Professor Chaulia, throughout his speech, the Prime Minister focused on how to improve India. He talked about how the environment was different now, and how development was the only solution that could take the country forward. What is the role that the Indian diaspora can play here?
Well, obviously, he's trying to transfer ideas as well. You know, some of them have been entrepreneurs, especially the latest generation of Indian Canadians has gotten into tech sector and all that. So while they may started off running motels and gas stations, now it's a different, you know, generation of the diaspora. So he'll want to, you know, energize, and he's presenting the view of a youthful India. But there, he wants also the, you know, the global Indians or the diaspora to feel that they are part of this whole project, and to come back and give back in different forms and shapes. So it's not just money or investment that we are seeking. And in the process, what he does is, you know, it's a kind of like a you know, mutual appreciation, because on one hand he wants them to understand that India, as in like Mother India, is changing, but at the same time there's this larger civilizational India that's spread out across the planet, and we are all, you know, hardworking entrepreneurial people who've given back to the home societies. So I think that's a big change in Modi. Yes, diaspora diplomacy is definitely there, but the way we've approached the diaspora in the past has been apologetic, you know. It's almost like, you know, you should just make that place your home and don't think about India. But whenever Mr. Modi does, it's different. He's appealing to this dual identity, or what some people call the identity crisis. In a way, he's resolving the identity crisis for our, you know, 25 million plus diaspora, including the large one in Canada. You see, you can, you know, home can be like two places. The one in your heart is India. But the one where you earn and where you make a living may be Canada. So I think there he has resolved a big contradiction in the diaspora sociology itself, which has been there for several decades. So in that sense, and it helps that Canada is also a big center for the overseas friends of the BJP and all that, because in a way the seamlessness that he's showing between India proper and the Indian diaspora, I think is a big achievement.
Right, Professor Chaulia, Canada and India share similar threats of terrorism and extremism. Perhaps we can have a common approach to security, and as Mr. Pal Chaudhary mentioned, we all do have a working group on counterterrorism.
Yeah, it's also a question of symmetry. We are both middle powers.
Right.
And usually there's a higher level of trust between middle powers because we don't, for example, spy on each other. The Americans spy on us all the time, and it's a big problem. So there is, when you talk of cyber security, intelligence sharing, for counterterrorism, there is more common ground because we don't have to fear their capabilities. Rather, we can share them. So that's where that's a huge advantage. And security cooperation, actually, Canada has been a soft target for terror, as was shown recently. And I think we have actually experienced far more of it. So in fact, we may have more to share with them and to help them as they firm up, because for a conservative government like Stephen Harper to show that they are tough on terror is going to be critical for re-election, and India may be helpful there.
But Professor Chaulia, and for investment also we have a long stall foreign investment protection pact, as the ambassador mentioned. It is yet to be ratified. What are the hurdles here? Well, very quickly.
It's all about the ability of Canadian companies to be able to sue the government of India. This is the reason why many of these investment treaties have been stuck in the past. Liabilities, can a government be sued by a private investor? We don't want to get into this mess with the Vodafone issue, and there's another Australian company as well. So it's obvious that they want some concessions. There's going to be give and take. But at the end of the day, with the low interest rate regime in the Western world, you're getting 2 or 3% of returns. They will eventually turn around to this part of the world, and that's where I think Prime Minister knows that we have a bargaining advantage. So we will of course make it as conducive as possible, as promising. But the structural reality is that there's no escaping India, and therefore they have to come and make in India.
Right, all right. Well, with that, we have to wrap up this discussion here. I'd like to thank all my guests for coming to the studios. It was a pleasure having you all here. That's it for now in this edition of Insight. Thanks for watching.